right. This is the place for truth and the deep dives into the issues that it will take to make real changes. I'm Stephanie Kendall, your host of From Dirt We Grow. And today's episode is all about empowerment, inspiration, relatability, and kind of rethinking learning by rethinking how we teach our children. So please stick around with us to learn all about what we're talking about here. And after you have heard from my guest and I, the conversation that we have, I would like to hear from you. I would love to hear your thoughts on how our children are taught, how you think the education system is that we have in place today, what could be improved on. What are your thoughts? Let me know. Of course, I would love for you to subscribe to the channel and share it to anyone that you feel would appreciate it or just needs to hear it. So, my guest is Miss Michelle Steiner. She is a writer, a speaker, a photographer, and a paraeducator. Welcome to the show, Miss Steiner. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Well, hello. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation.
I had never heard the phrase paraeducator before or the word. I had to look it up. Tell us about that because I might not be the only one that has never heard of that. I mean, I've heard of obviously a teacher's aide.
Yes, actually, a paraeducator is a teacher's aide or a paraprofessional. And what I do is I help the teacher in the classroom and the students. I'm working with seventh graders this year, and sometimes it might every student is different. Sometimes that might some student might just need extra time to complete a test. I might be reading a test aloud to a student. Other students might need help with just reinforcing material that they don't quite understand. Other ones just might need a little bit of redirection to be able to keep on task. And I think it's funny. I can help all. I always tell the kids I can help you with anything except for math, and they all find that out soon after they get to know me. And I think sometimes that's a good thing because uh, they need to be able to see that not everybody is good at everything and everybody struggles with something in life.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I like that, and I feel like that's kind of a common issue that we a lot of people have a problem with is math.
Mhm.
So you're not alone. Let's travel backwards a little bit. Let's start from the beginning and tell us what led you to this career path.
One of the biggest reasons that I was led to this career path was I have a learning disability. And I always knew that I wanted to go to college and I wanted to work with kids and I wanted to help others that had disabilities. But I knew that certain things would be really difficult for me with college. And this is where I thought this is the perfect place for me to be at because I don't have to be a certified teacher, but I can still work with students and be able to make a difference.
That's awesome. So you wanted to kind of use your experience and turn it into helping others who may have the same experience.
Exactly. This is my way of being able to give back and to be able to feel like I've come full circle with a lot of with myself. And I think it's really amazing how things have worked out because whenever I get to hear my students talk, sometimes it's like hearing myself at that age. I get students that'll say, "Well, I hate my learning disability," or "I wish that I didn't have an individualized education plan." Or I feel like I'm not smart. And I get to tell them that they are smart. And I get to tell them that it's not a bad thing to have a disability. And I think one of the things that really separates me from some of the staff that I work with is I know what that's like because I've sat in many of their shoes before of being that student that's in the classroom and they're struggling or they're frustrated. And that's not something that I think I could do that I could do without having a disability.
So from what I'm hearing, there are multiple types of learning disabilities.
We have students that have learning disabilities. We have ones that from all actually 13 disability categories. And learning disabilities is one of them. And some of them might have trouble with reading. Other ones might have trouble with math, even. Some people might have difficulty with how they hear language. Some can have a speech with that, or even with their expressive language that can come along with that. Others might struggle with their eye hand coordination, or they might struggle to write with having a learning disability. Other people, students that I have, some have autism. Other ones might have intellectual disabilities. We get students that have emotional and behavioral issues. We see a lot of attention deficit disorder. We see ones that just might have some that need emotional support. And we also have ones, there's even people that might be in the class that might be hearing impaired or deaf. We have students who are blind. I've done one work with visually impaired and blind students before. And we also have students that might come in and they don't have an individualized education plan, but they have another health impairment. So they might have migraines, they might have diabetes, they might have epilepsy, and they don't need to have a plan with goals, but we have what's called the Section 504. So that is basically they'll identify the students that need those supports. And what they'll do is we have a plan on what to do if a student does have a seizure or a student might have a headache, and we're able to support students that are in the classroom with that.
Wow, that is just like the most
Mhm.
diverse explanation. How important is that to each student to be individualized like that?
Right. That is so key for them because not only with our students might have different disabilities and different support needs, but also, like you said, some learn better with seeing things, others might learn better with hearing things. And it's so important that we're able to go into first of all teachers for to provide a wide variety of instruction for different learning styles, and also it's helpful to have somebody else in the room too that can go and take a student aside that might just be really struggling with a concept. Sometimes I might take them and we might do I might read the instructions out loud. Sometimes even I might have to do that for my own benefit to be able to understand, yeah, what is going on,
Mm.
and I can break that down for them. Every student that we have, that we're able to offer as much as we can a customized approach to what they need. And that can be a challenge sometimes. It can be hard with funding. It can be hard with just trying to get people in the classroom to be staffed. But the more that we can do that and the more help that these students can have and support services, the better off that they're going to be.
Yeah, I totally agree. I wish you said you're in a public school, so obviously it can be done. Are you in like a smaller town or something, or like you don't see this very often in public schools, do you?
Right. A lot of I do. We do live in a small town, a small community, but I mean, it depends a lot of times on the state that you live in. It also depends on your community, how they provide services, and not every school district is the same. Even in Pennsylvania, every school district offers services differently. In our school, we have general ed classes where students go in, and sometimes there'll be teachers, they might have a co-teacher with having a learning support teacher that goes in and co-teaches. And sometimes they might even send me into some of them if the learning support teacher has to go into another room to teach. And then we also have more of a structured study hall where students can get the help that they need during that time, and we can work on a lot of those lessons and those skills as well. So it just really depends on the state, depends on the district.
Now, curiously, have you seen any effects in your school specifically from the budget cuts or curriculum pulling that has been going on?
Yes, we have received cuts from our with federal funding, and right now our state is we have not we have not got our funds yet because they have not set the budget for Pennsylvania. So our district is coming up with funds that they had in their savings. Other ones are taking out lines of credit nearby. So it is definitely affecting our district, and not just even in the classroom, in other ways too. I mean, it's hard to hire people. For example, bus transportation is hard.
I wouldn't have ever thought of that as part of it, you know?
Yeah, people don't consider things like, and for a lot of our students too, even in their IEP, that's considered a service. I mean, they might have a minivan that takes them where they need to go.
How do you help kids discover their best way of learning? How do you know and how do they tell you their best way of learning?
So one of the things that I really try to do with the kids is to see what are they interested in. You might have a child that might do well with music, so you might want to maybe have them sing something that they know how to do, or like some are really good with drawing, so we want to encourage that. Sometimes if I do spelling words, I really might help a lot of those kids, be able to decide. Some of them can memorize them by just maybe splitting up the word. I've had other kids that might put like different letters down to be able to spell the word out. They might have that. So I think it's using what can work for them and using their interest as much as we possibly can and getting them to think, okay, well, what does really work for you?
Now, I'm glad you brought up creative focused. So, like art, how important is that? You know how for years they've been cutting funding for arts in schools, music. How important is that in building their confidence or building their skills?
Right, that is so important to be able to do that. I mean, it is one of those things that kids really do need to have that because that could be a way to reach a child that maybe doesn't learn maybe how everybody else does, but that's a great way to be able to do that is to be able to have all that stuff, is to be able to learn throughout different ways.
That's a critical thing that they're cutting that is so needed. Have you seen that? Have you seen funding being cut for those kind of programs?
Oh, a lot of that. I have seen that so much. We've seen that. Yeah, a lot of funding has been cut. I mean, that is definitely some of the things that can be. I mean, we are very lucky in the school I work at that we have like music and we have art programs and it hasn't been cut. But I mean, it is one of those things that a lot of times that can be a consideration where they do cut a lot of those, or we have to think of new ways to be able to do things. And it's just so important to be able to do that. And I guess if I had one wish, that I would be able to just be able to fund all of those things and make sure they have teachers and things like that to be able to help.
Wouldn't that be great if we invested in our children?
Yes,
Wouldn't that make sense?
it certainly would.
Why do you think society still stigmatizes learning disabilities?
Well, I think a lot of people don't understand what they are. A lot of people think, well, it must be dyslexia, where you just see numbers backwards. Or it might be, but a lot of people think that some people with disabilities can do anything. Other people think that they can't do nothing. So it's really difficult with all that.
It's kind of like the mental health stigma. It's just so, okay, you're different. So you're just going to be kind of tossed to the side and not, we don't want to think about that. We don't want to deal with you.
Right. Exactly.
You hear so much about autism these days and how it's a terrible thing, especially with this whole Tylenol crisis thing that's going on. And it's not funny, but you know what I mean. It's just these crazy things that they come up with.
Right, right, exactly.
And how autism is this stigmatized thing. These children are gifted. Do you work with autistic children?
I do have some children that are in my not necessarily, but I do have children that do come in my class that do have autism. And some of them do come in with that. And it is amazing to be able to work with them as well, too. Definitely. I think that it's great to see some of the gifts that people have and just be able to do all of that.
Now, what are the some of the spectrums of it that you see? What are their gifts that you've noticed? Because I don't know anybody autistic. Let's learn more about that. Since it's such a stigmatized thing.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, with autism, I mean, it's one of those things. You get one person, once you meet one person with autism, you've simply met one person. And they each are all different. Some people are really great visual thinkers and they can see details that others miss. Some people are really good with auditory and they can do that. Other ones, and everybody struggles with different things. Some might struggle more with social cues. Others might have sensory issues with that. Some are able to be function well in the classroom and don't need as much support. Others might need a more supportive environment, and everybody is just so different.
Now, I don't like it, but I understand how it's very hard to individualize things as far as because of funding.
Mhm.
But it's so important. It's so important. Do you have any ideas on how it can be done without being so expensive?
Well, I think a lot of times with funding too, we have to remember it's not about the Cadillac. Sometimes we have the Ford, and that's okay. And that can be something too. A lot of it too is grants are really important, and just people being able to work around in the community to be able to do a lot of those things.
How about awareness? If we get it out there more that this is what's important and this is what needs to be done and this is how it can change and how can we do that?
Right. I think it's definitely just talking about our experiences is so important and just being aware of what that is and people sharing experiences of themselves, family members that they know, and friends, and just having that conversation, I think, is so key.
Yeah. Well, that's why I'm so glad that you were here with me today to be able to share some of these things that just needs to kind of have a voice. It needs to get out there
Right.
because it's such an unknown territory. And it shouldn't be. It needs to not be.
Right, exactly. I would just love to say that I think it's so important that we treat every person as an individual and that it's not a cookie cutter thing. Every child is different, every person is. And if I just had another wish, it would be that we had more programming that is centered around each child for them to be able to grow and to thrive.
Yeah, that's so key, honestly. Does your school, do you, or have you seen critical thinking being taught?
I think that's one of the things we're trying. I work with seventh graders this year, and that is one of the things we're trying to do in the history classes to get them to think critically. It's to maybe we might even encourage that thinking. There might be like a picture that might be up on the smart board, and we'll say, "Well, what do you think that is based on that?" And the kids are like, "Well, I don't know what that picture is," and we're like, "Well, just take a guess. Think about what might give you those clues." And we're trying to get them to think more critically and to think about to make those connections where school isn't just a class, but that's out in the real world. I can remember when I was in college, I took an intro to logics and I did not do very well in the class, but the teacher said, I don't want anyone in this class to think, oh, you're going to remember every single thing I told you or what fallacies like we talked about. But what I want you to do someday is I want you to be able, when something doesn't make sense, I want you to stop and think about it. And I often think that that is one of the key things in my life is that I now try to stop and think about things before I make a decision.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
For everyone out there, I hope you hear the story and share it because it is, like I said, it's so important to get this out here. Thank you, Michelle, and thank you everybody for listening. And we will see you next week right here on From Dirt We Grow. Have a good one, guys.